India. India, not just because Alex is in the front there, but it probably is our favourite place. We've been there a few times. Just quickly, right at the top where it says Leh or Leh, that's in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It's right on the borders of Tibet, in the foothills of the Himalayas, and it's where you are likely to see, or most likely to see, a stone leopard. But we haven't been there. That's for another time. That's just for general information. Where it says India on the map there, that's where we spend most of our time in the states of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, a little bit further down, Karnataka, and right over to the left there, Mary put that pointer, is the Gujarat, and that has a very special animal, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Yeah. This is just a typical scene, it's just like a scene if you like, a typical main track through one of the major national parks in India. There's about 52 of them that are recognised to have tigers in. It's most of the tracks will be a half or a third of that size. Next, yeah. This is one of the most popular, well, yes, he is the most common, probably, of all creatures in all the national parks, and that is the chital, or the spotted deer. A rather handsome young male, sort of walking across and towards us. He's normally in family groups of 20, 30, maybe up to 50 strong. And of course he is the main prey animal of the big cats and indeed most of the predators. This is a somewhat larger person, a rather handsome male samba deer. He's probably bigger than our red deer, so he's quite a large lad. Notice the colour rendition, he does blend in quite well. This is the dry season. When it's a little bit more wooded, I mean 10, 20 yards, 30 yards away, he stands still. You just wouldn't see him, big though he is. And one of the most common birds is the Indian roller bird. Beautiful coloured bird, quite well habituated, unlike a lot of birds that as soon as you get their away, they seem to be able to stand quite still, so you get a reasonable shot of them. When they take off, they've got those wonderful turquoise blue and brown wings and a rather large tail they have. Absolutely wonderful in flight. Sadly, we didn't get a shot of one in flight, but they are lovely birds. Of course, everybody has a stork, and the Indians do have. This is the great adjutant stork. He's a fairly solitary person with those long spindly legs of his. He's normally round in the swamps, in the water, and he's looking for mollusks, invertebrates, small fish. Sadly, he's normally by himself. Look at his face, I'm not surprised really. He's a very haughty person. The next one, high up in the canopy again, Mary saw this one from about 70 or 80 yards away many years ago, and it still remains one of our favourite shots of this lovely bird. It's the honey buzzard, and he's very similar to our buzzard, probably in size and in coloration as well. He's a gorgeous bird. And my favourite bird of prey is this one. We saw him again this year. We've seen him a few times. He's the crested serpent eagle. And he almost did it to order. You can probably see down here, he just caught a serpent and he flew up right in front of us and stopped on the tree, right just over our heads. And what they do immediately, they've caught a snake, they just bite its head off straight away, and within about 2 or 3 minutes, he'd swallowed the damn thing whole. Couldn't believe it. It was a wonderful experience. And of course, India does have quite a lot of egrets. There's the great egret, the cattle egret, the little egret, and of course there are cormorants as well, but rarely do you see them together. Somehow these two got in a juxtaposition where one could be talking to the other at the same head height. I thought there was a joke there somewhere, but Mary said I must desist from that. What did the cormorant say to the great egret? Another one of our favourites, high up in the canopy, we managed to get a close-up of them. They're quite often on the skyline. Very difficult to photograph, as you'll appreciate, because they're black generally. This one we caught in the midst of the trees, and he looks quite an old person. He's the Malabar pied hornbill. There are a number of hornbills, but he's probably the most colourful one. I think he's a fairly old chap, because his bill's starting to look a bit crusty and cracked. Looked as though he could do with a bit of a sandpaper. But he's a lovely bird. He stood still long enough for us to get that shot. Everybody has a small owl, of course. This is the pygmy owl. He's about 6 to 8 inches high, so he's quite like our little owl, I suppose. They're normally tucked away in branches of trees, in the crux of the trees, and you just don't see them in daylight hours, as is the way of owls, of course. Lucky to get this one out in the relative open and with his eyes open, of course. And this is the shikra. He's the smallest of the Indian birds of prey. He's very distinguishable by his mottled and almost stripy breast, lovely grey head and a very vivid purple eye. He's the smallest one. He's probably smaller than our kestrel, quite a bit smaller than our kestrel. Gorgeous bird and very rarely seen. Just a little distraction. Mary took this one as we were going through one of the national parks. There's probably well over 100 different butterfly species in most of the national parks, and this one is aptly called the plain tiger butterfly. This is probably another one, it definitely is another one of the most common inhabitants of the Asian parks generally, not just India. It's the langur monkey. There is the rhesus macaque, another one, but this is the most common one. And the next photograph is probably the most typical shot that you'll get. Mother and baby. Mary's managed to get the catchlight in his eye, and you can actually see his Mr. Spock ears over there. They tend to be in groups, just back again for a moment last week. They tend to be in groups of anything from 20, 30, 40, 50 strong. Very habituated with human beings, as most monkeys are, and particularly these. They'll come right up to you and you can sit there for hours just watching their antics and playing together in family groups. We love it. Going on to the predators, this is probably the smallest predator. He is like a small domestic dog, but he is the Indian wild dog, the dog. And he looks fairly innocuous, fairly benign there. But actually, when he gets together with his chums and his pals, he's very ferocious. In a group of 6, 8, 10 or 12 of them, they will bring down a very large deer with huge, dangerous antlers. They will bring one of those down with no trouble at all. A slightly larger predator, he's rather a handsome chap, I hope you'll agree. It looks as though he's sort of stopping to pose for us there. He wasn't just trotting through. Unlike the Indian wild dog, he tends to be in pairs. They hunt together, male and female, and spend the rest of their lives together. They're very formidable hunters, as well as the wild dogs. Of course, we were very lucky to see this leopard almost looking at us, because those of you that have been on a safari at all, you'll know from Africa or India or wherever, leopards are very widespread. But during the course of the day, you hardly see them. You know, there's normally a leg or a tail hanging down from a tree, and that's the best photo that you'll get. So we were quite lucky to get this one. He was almost looking at us. And this was better still. This was late in the day, the sun was dropping down, and it was about 6 o'clock in the evening, light was definitely fading. And why did that leopard cross the road? Well, he crossed the road because he was chasing a peahen that scuttled across just a little while beforehand and managed to get up into a tree. And he was just a little bit too late, and he walked across the road and stopped and just sort of half looked at us. There's a lovely shot of a full-grown male leopard. Gorgeous creature. Mentioned Gujarat earlier on, right on the left-hand side of India. This is the place right at the bottom of Gujarat. There's one small national park called Gir or Gir, and it's the place that houses the Asiatic lion. It's the only place in the world where there are lions outside of Africa, and almost identical to their African cousins. Slightly smaller, but still as formidable and still as handsome and beautiful as the African ones. He came up within about 5 metres of us as well. This is the sloth bear. Now, sloth bears are fairly common throughout the national parks of India, but they're not often seen. And they're not often seen because they spend most of their time with their heads down like that. They've got very powerful front paws and huge claws like my fingers, and they're grubbing around in tree roots in the forest. So dark shadows, black bear, difficult to photograph. He broke cover for some reason, and we just managed to get a couple of shots of him. Gorgeous creature. He's about 3/4 of the size, say, of an American black bear, if that's a little bit more familiar to you. Lovely creature. We're very lucky to get him. And what everybody goes to India for is the Bengal tiger. And her name is Kankati, and she's 4.5 years old, and she's just broken cover from the bamboo behind her, and she's just coming forward towards the watering hole. And last is our handsome Samrat. And he's 18 months old, the boy, and we caught a couple of years ago. Sadly, through someone's abject stupidity, he died shortly afterwards. Samrat, as I'm sure my friend at the front will confirm, Samrat actually means emperor in Hindi. And sadly, Samrat never grew up to become one. But we'll leave you this passing thought of what we think is the most beautiful creature in the world, the Bengal tiger.